Yay, my check, my check. Very, very good. So, I'm Dr. Coolwhoop again. I'm continuing with my top tier list for subclasses video series that coincides with the write-up that I made. Uh, this one is going to be talking about the Attunement of Grace. This is one of the new subclasses that came in the Forsaken expansion. It's a very nice class. It does a lot of really cool stuff. It's a very good support role class, and the build that I have to showcase around this is a support role-esque build. How to optimize this kind of playstyle to the most benefit as possible. So I'm going to show in the background some alternative loadouts that we could be using for comp to really synergize with our gear. We have a couple of shotguns, scavengers, as well as some enhanced hand cannon perks. But to really showcase the power of this subclass, I decided to go with a full-on support role kind of build. So I've got Unflinching Large Arms on my Phoenix Protocol. I also have Unflinching Energy Aim, which synergizes with my Luna's Howl. This is a very good roll on the Phoenix Protocol, so I was very lucky with that. But what we're going to be using is a Slug Shotgun along with Vigilance Wing. The idea is using a high damage output weapon in the primary that's very consistent. So you can see in the background, Cerberus +1, Bygones, Rodriguez's Broadsword / Claymore, and maybe even like a Tiger Spite are pretty good options, but I'm choosing Vigilance Wing for its perk set, and it's an extremely good damage output weapon in the slot. There's some other alternative builds that you can use, like a Pulse Rifle. I've found Pulse Rifles to be very efficient with the Well of Radiance subclass. And there's also some other weapons that you could use too. If you have really good rolls on your shotgun, you're not restricted into using any particular type. But this good bone structure is one of my favorite weapons. I was really hoping to get a range masterwork on this. This is one of the current grinds that I'm after, is a max range good bone structure with the same perk set, so I can just upgrade this one. But this one performs extremely well. I'd like accurized rounds and a range masterwork on the good bone structure. I'm following it up with a play of the game that has proxy det, blast radius masterwork, quick draw, and autoloading holster. It's very good. I haven't figured out what kind of mod to put in there because I'm not sure that it even really needs one. But for the most part, you can see the rest of the build in detail. I've got heavy lifting equipped in my helmet. This is another really solid armor piece. It does have a scatter rifle projectile targeting, which will synergize with pulse rifles. But I'm not using that. I'm favoring heavy lifting because I really would like to get to my super as much as possible. This is a 5 super cooldown build. And then it revolves around the Phoenix Protocol. Now, one of the other things that I want to mention about Vigilance Wing is that it heals you when an ally near you dies. It also gets an increase to its handling, which is already superb. And the next benefit that Vigilance Wing does is that it is an extremely good weapon for generating assists and putting damage down on multiple targets. So while you're in the Well of Radiance, you want to be putting out as much damage as possible, but you do benefit from getting kills and assists while in the Well of Radiance when you have Phoenix Protocol equipped. So I'm using a weapon that maximizes my efficiency in the primary slot with my Well of Radiance, as well as a nice backup weapon for some finesse plays and aerial combat through my good bone structure. Now, in my tier list, I place this fairly close to the top, this subclass fairly close to the top. The reason why it's a top tier class is because of the advantage that having grenade support and healing can have in an environment, whether it be in competitive or in quick play or in other areas. I think that it's a very synergistic playstyle when you consider the fact that your abilities can recharge while you're in your rift, or when you have allies in the rift. That does help generate ability energy for your melee, your grenade, and your rift. And healing enemy or healing allies and empowering allies will generate more ability energy towards your grenade, melee, and rift as well. So it's got some very good synergy along with its perk set that really does encourage you to play as supportive as possible for your team. And if you're on top of your abilities and on top of your role and designation in the game, you can lead to some very big plays for you and your team. There's some alternative selfish routes that you can use where you can charge a grenade, dunk it on the wall or the ground, and then use that to encourage a push with a shotgun or like a sidearm or a heavy weapon. So there are some options for selfish play, but it does really synergize the most around with playing for the team and playing with the team and giving your team the best advantage that they can have in the game. Now, I do really enjoy this subclass. It's a very fun subclass to use. I think it has very good movement available to it. I think it has very good exotic pairings. I think that there's a lot of weapons that pair well with the subclass, and I also think that there are a lot of very good exotic armor pieces that make this subclass feel exceptional. The only reason that I don't have it really up in the S tier brackets for PvP is just because the super, while extremely good, doesn't always hit the mark. A good competent team in comp or even in quick play, if you're really concerned about that, will lock down either your super, your Well of Radiance. They will push you with heavy, or they'll push you with something like Telesto or other heavy weapons like a shotgun, even though that's not really technically a heavy weapon, but it does have a lot of benefit to shutting down the Well. Shotguns are very powerful against the Well. They can put down quick damage and knock you out of it very quickly. So I think that Well, you're a little bit more susceptible to damage while you're in the Well. If you can set it up in a good position and lock down that position, and your enemy isn't using their strategy as best as possible. What I was doing there when I was teabagging that area, I was saying that that's a really common place for people to put the Well at, but I think that as you learn, you want to try and guard your Well sword, your benevolent sword. You want to try and guard that as much as possible. So I placed the Well behind this little nook, and this gives me multiple lines of sight on some of the main lanes in this map. Now, I was being contested very hard here by the enemy team. More often than not, this is not going to happen. But in an ideal situation, if you place your Well in a good position, you can utilize a lot of different lanes and have access to power and potency throughout the map, and have a good impact on the entire map so long as your Well placement is good. And you also can use your cover to your benefit so that you can strafe in and out of cover to maximize your staying power in your Well as well. So I think that while I rated the subclass very low, it's a very fun and very strong subclass. In the right hands, this subclass can be top tier, and the only reason, the only reason why I didn't put this subclass in the S tier bracket is because of its super. Again, I think the super is very good, it's fun, it's a very nice addition to the team. It's a beautifully crafted, well synergized subclass, and it's an amazing subclass to use. So if you're playing it and you don't think that I'm right or wrong about my my assessment of the subclass in the tier list or in the order of its tiers, I won't argue with you. I think that this is one of those subclasses that can be argued about for its viability and usability and functionality in the Crucible. And it's just an amazing subclass. So it's really hard for me to say that it's not an S tier subclass when it performs so well. But there are moments where you get pushed by supers and so on and so forth, just like that, where you get locked out of your own super and it doesn't feel as rewarding as something that leads to like a higher kill count, like a Slayer super would. So I think the A rating, like an A+ rating, is a really good rating for this subclass. This was a good display of the potency of the subclass, but it took me a couple of clips to really get a nice game that really showed off the strengths of this this subclass well, and I think that that's why I don't place it in the S tier bracket, is that it's not going to consistently be good all the time. A lot of it is dependent on your team. A lot of it is dependent on the enemy team, what they're competent at, what they're going to use as far as their weapons, what supers they're using for their weapons. If you encounter a lot of Blade Barrage will just shut you down and destroy your Benevolent Dawn Sword, and it will completely lock you out of your super. So if you're fighting Blade Barrage or Nova Warp or anything like that, even Arc Strider and the Way of the Wraith is fairly decent. Hammers is also a very strong counter to this. So So I still don't rank it up in the S tier for consistency, but for incremental gains and for highly synergized team play, I think that this definitely comes very close to being S tier with the right hands. Now again, I'm on Xbox, so my recording does cut out there, and it doesn't really matter, but my recording does cut out, and I tried to pick up. This is still the same game. Don't worry about it. I lost my train of thought now. Poop. It's not good. In the middle of a commentary. Anyways, I'm going to try and find something else redeeming about this, is that one of the nice things with the exotic, the Phoenix Protocol, is that you do get a lot of super energy for the kills and assists while you're in your well. If you can maximize that as much as possible, like I said, use a weapon that has high damage output and consistent spread and reliability while you're in your well, because you will be pushed very aggressively, if at all, while you're in your well, and you want to make sure that you can maximize your time spent in the well to generate as much energy as possible. And one of the things that I find to be very rewarding with this subclass is the ability to use a 5 super cooldown build. And I think in the competitive scene, using a 5 super cooldown build with this particular subclass is very beneficial for your team and yourself. Getting well down first ensures 2 orbs, which can close out the time between your teammates' supers and the enemy's supers. And if you're running a 5 super cooldown build, you have more uptime on your super as well as other supers, and your super will be more likely to be uncontestable in the map in a competitive environment. So in competitive, I do really feel that this subclass, with the right player behind it, has the potential to be truly great. But again, I would like to say that it doesn't hit S tier for me just because of how many viable counters there are to its actual super. But for neutral game, if you're looking for a really good, fun subclass to play that has a unique role in the sandbox that's different from anything else in the sandbox, this is probably genuinely one of the best subclasses in the game, bar none. That was a nice snipe, by the way. That guy hit me really hard with that and got trucked. So props to that man. Anyways, I don't think I really have too much more to talk about other than, I guess, the abilities. The grenade has a lot of utility. You can heal yourself, you can heal your teammates. That helps recharge your abilities. The melee does empower you, bolstering your damage when you're using a weapon like Vigilance Wing that already has a very efficient and reliable and easy TTK. That makes chaining kills very reliable and consistent if you end up in those kind of encounters. Making sure that you have very synergistic armor along with your build is very important. I have very good armor pieces with this, with good masterworks. I was very fortunate, and I spent a lot of time curating my loadout as much as possible to ensure that I can maximize my potential in the Crucible. And I think that that's something, the more refined your build is going to be, the more you will get out of a subclass like this, just because of the type of playstyle that it revolves around. So if you're interested in a very top tier, highly synergistic, team-oriented playstyle, this is definitely one of the best subclasses in the game, bar none. I love it. It's amazing. The design team did a fantastic job with this. Claude Jerome on Twitter is the guy who did this, so